Hey lighting people, today we're going to talk about GrandMA3 objects and the different actions that you can have assigned to them. An object in MA3 is basically anything like a group, a macro, a preset, or a sequence, something that's stored in a pool on GrandMA3. When I say object action, I'm referring to the action that happens whenever you manipulate such an object, such as tapping on it, specifically only tapping on it if it's in the preset pool, or you can also be manipulating an object by tapping on a button, turning an encoder, or pushing a fader, or doing it virtually on the screen using these controls right here. To start off with, all objects have default actions. Some objects have defaults that can be changed, while some only have one option. A good example of this would be the tags pool, which is right here. The default action for the tags pool is list reference. So if I click on one of these, it's going to give me the list of items that are referenced by this tag and that this tag is referencing, if it's referencing any. And this window does not give me the option to change the default action for tags. Now, I believe tags are the only object that have the default action be list reference. The most common default actions are call or select. For example, the groups pool, you can only select fixtures. That is the default action for the groups pool. And this is not something that you can actually change. So we can go here. There's no option to change what action is happening whenever we click on a group object. But there are some objects like macros and plugins that you have the option to change the pool action. The macro and plugin pools offer several options. The default is call, but we can also change it to toggle or none. And the call action basically just like recalls the object. So like you click on it, then it does whatever that object does by default. Calling a macro, calling a plugin makes it run. Toggle would make it so that you can turn it off partway through by clicking on it again. And you can also set the macro pool action to none, which just means that when you tap on a macro, nothing will happen. And with plugins, we have the same three options. Now, presets default action is suffix/at, but we also have the option to change it to a whole list of options. We can set it to none, suffix/extract, at, flash, go plus temp, or toggle. And with presets and sequences, so both presets and sequences are a little unique because they have a long list of actions that you can use. They have different lists from each other. The default for sequences is select, and the default for presets is suffix/at, but we have a whole different list for each of these. But both of these allow us to also toggle on this option of use object action. And what that does is it lets us define an action specifically to each object. Now, I'll show you how to change this on both presets and sequences because it's different. On a preset, you swipey and go to edit setting. And then you have this button right here, object action, which currently I have this one set to suffix/at. It's going to default to pool default. So if you just open this and you haven't changed it, the default is pool default, which then will use whatever the pool default is. But then if it has something other than the pool default assigned, then that will be used as opposed to the pool default when the pool is set to let you use the object action. So in this case, I set it to suffix/at. And these are each set to different ones. We're going to talk about the icons. Whenever it has an action assigned, it'll have the icon on it like this. This one right here is grayed out, not because it doesn't have data or something, but because it's set to none. So clicking on this will never do anything because the action is set to none. This sequence right here is set to pool default, which means it's just showing up like a normal sequence because there is no special action defined. Now for a sequence, the way you change this is you go to edit and then settings, and the setting is right here under playback, object action, and it defaults to pool default. You can change it to any of these options. We have the same options as we have for the sequence pool or the preset pool as a whole. So now we're going to talk about exactly what the icons mean and what each one does. So this one, as you could see, is set to select, and it just shows us this big S, and this just means that whenever we click on it, it is going to select it. Now, if you're not familiar, you always have the option to do something different than the default if you type in the command line or press a hard key on the console, or in some way enter in the command line a command and then tap on it. it will follow that command. This is just a default for when you click on it without something already being in the command line. So if I just click on this, it's going to select. If I just click on this one, it is going to flash it. This icon means flash. Now what flash does is when you tap on it, it immediately, instantly, no fade time, takes it to the output of the queue. So we go from the sequence not being active to the first queue being immediately on 100%. And then when we let go, again, no fade time or anything is respected. It's instantly off. This icon right here means go. And this means that if we click on this, it just goes to the next sequence. If we have multiple sequences, it said failed go plus sequence 3 because it doesn't have another queue to go to and wraparound is disabled. But anytime we click on this, it will just apply a go to that sequence. I'm going to turn it off. And then this icon right here means temp. And if you click on it, it looks like it's doing the same thing as flash. You click on it, it holds at that value until you let go. But this is different because it actually respects the fade time. So if you put a fade time in the queue, if you put a fade time in the off queue, those timings will be respected when you turn it on and off. This icon right here means toggle, which means you click it once, it goes to the first queue, you click it again, it turns it off. There's no option to go to another queue, it's only always the first queue. Clicking it once turns it on, clicking it again turns it off, and it does respect the fade times. This icon means go to, which means if you click on it, it's going to give you a pop-up to click on which queue you want to go to. And it only has basically a couple of queues. I can go to the off queue, and that's weird because then it goes to the off queue but doesn't turn off. I'm gonna have to turn that off. Honestly, I can't see it being very helpful to have this as your sequence pool action, but that is an option right there. This icon right here does a load command, which means when you click on it, it gives you a pop-up to choose a queue to load. And then when a queue is loaded, the next time you hit go plus, it's going to go to that queue. Then this icon right here means top, which, okay, this one is a little counterintuitive to me. It looks like it's saying go back to the beginning, and top is up, and this is not up. But I mean, I guess they had to get creative with their icons some kind of way so they all look different. Whenever you click on this one, it will go to the first queue no matter what queue you're on. So even if you're already further on in the sequence, it will activate the first queue in the sequence. So it's going back to the top of the queue list. And then this one is the pool action default, which is select. So if I click it, it just selects it. Speaking of icons, you can always see what the pool default is right here. So this one has the S, this one has the /@ symbol. This is /@. Over here, you can see the C here for call, but also it has an icon right here. So this little pointy icon right here means use object action. So if I turn it off, that goes away. And all of these also go back to just the normal look because you're not using the object actions at that point. But that data is still saved in the sequence, so you turn it back on, they're still saved there. Now, some of the preset actions that you can set are the same as some for the sequences, so I'm not going to show those because they just look the same. But these ones are a little bit different. So this one is /@, which means that the first time you click it, it will select the fixtures that are stored in that preset. And the next time you click it, it will set the fixtures that are currently selected at the value in the preset. If you select fixtures before you click on it the first time, at functions the first time you click it. This one right here is /extract. And extract basically takes the values out of the preset without providing a preset reference. And then this one right here is just at, so it's just always at. Every time you click it, it's just going to try to apply the preset to the selected fixtures. If there aren't any selected fixtures, that's just not going to work. And this all grayed out means that it has the action none assigned. So every time you click on it, nothing will happen. I already mentioned that. Now, these are all of the actions that you have as options in the preset pool or the sequence pool for when you click on an object in the pool. But when you assign it to an executor, you get a whole other set of options. So I have already assigned this sequence to this executor, and the only thing I did was just assign it. Actually, to just make sure that we're all on the same page, I'm going to delete it and assign, click here. It is assigned here now. And so we can see this row right here, this part below here, by the way, is the handles of the objects like you would have with physical faders and encoders. And then this section is just the part that you always see on the console. So that's why it's kind of offset here. This goes to this and this goes to this. But when I assigned it, the default action here is go plus, not select, even though I have select assigned in the sequence pool. So the default configuration, as it were, for a object assigned to a playback executor is not going to be the same as what's in the preset pool. So there's a whole other set of options as soon as you assign it to an executor. And you can see this sequence right here shows this icon right here. So we can see here that it says go plus, but on the console, you'll always have this little icon, which is the go icon. Same one as right here. The icons always match across everywhere. So we have this go icon and we know this sequence is assigned a go on that button. And then because this one also has an encoder, the encoder assignment is shown here, and it's shown the same way for encoders as for faders. Obviously, an object can only be assigned to either an encoder or a fader. And so it will show you this is set to master, and the master is currently at 100%. And this is really strange to try to adjust while you're on a PC with a mouse. But when I changed it to 60%, it's showing you also the value of it. When you have an executor assigned to multiple buttons and faders, and so there's multiple executors, like this one, it shows you the top one and the next one. And so it's the top encoder, the second one, and the fader right here. And they are all actually using the same function, so they're tied together, but you could have them assigned different functions. So now we're going to go into the assign menu and talk about what all of the options are and how to set them. And this is drastically different on version 2.3, which is what I'm using right now, than it is on the previous versions. If you're on a previous version, it's going to look a little more like this. So like this is on version 2.2. You just click and drag on an object to select your actions. That is how it works. That's basically the biggest difference to what we're talking about right now between this and version 2.3. But here on 2.3, we have it looking like this, and it's really nice. I love this new layout, but whenever you have an object assigned, you can click on, this is the encoder section, this is the button press section, and then we have the options over here to change those to whatever the options are for that particular type of object. And there are more options for a sequence assigned to an executor than there are in the sequence pool. So for instance, we have it currently assigned go plus, and we can see that icon. We can make it empty. This is go fast back, which will, irrespective of timing, go to the previous queue. Go fast forward will, irrespective of timing, go to the next queue. At is not available for sequences. Black immediately sets the lights to 0. No timing is respected again. And then when you let go, then they'll go back to the master value. This is basically like pulling the master for the sequence down all the way. And by the way, the master for a sequence is basically just defining how much dimmer output there is. It doesn't affect anything besides the dimmer output, but we'll get more into fader functions in a minute. So call right here is not available for a sequence either. Double speed is going to increase the speed of the speedmaster specific to that sequence. Fast sync is going to sync the phasers quickly, and it may result in something changing instantaneously, and it might not look good, but you can use that to quickly sync the phasers. Flash is going to do the opposite of black, so it's going to instantly, irrespective of timing, bring the lights to 100, not actually to 100% dimmer brightness. It's going to be 100% of whatever the master is. So it's like bringing the master fader to 100, and then when you let go, instantly back to the value they were at before you flashed them to 100. Go plus, you're familiar with. Go minus goes to the previous queue, and it uses queue timing. Go to allows you to decide what queue you want to go to. Half speed is going to be the opposite of double speed. Kill activates a go on the sequence, but also turns off all other sequences that don't have kill protect enabled. Learn is going to be a combination of, I don't remember if it's fast sync or resync. Fast sync, I think, based on the icon. I think that's what it is. Learn is going to be a combination of fast sync and learn speed, which learn speed, when you tap it multiple times, it's going to just take the speed you're tapping and set the speed master to that. So learn sets the speed to how you're tapping and also syncs the lights simultaneously. Load is going to, again, give you a pop-up to choose a queue to load. Login is not available for a sequence. Off turns the sequence off using the timing in the off queue and everything. On turns the sequence on. What sequence turns on is going to be dependent on some of your sequence settings, but typically that's going to be the first queue. Pause is going to just pause the fade if the sequence is actively fading. And then rate 1 is going to reset the rate assigned to that sequence to 1. Resync does the same as fast sync, where it resyncs the phasers, except that it does it kind of gradually so that you don't see a sudden change. Select obviously selects the sequence. Select fixtures selects all fixtures that are stored in that sequence. Speed 1 resets the speed for that sequence to 60 BPM. Swap starts the playback of a sequence and pulls down the dimmer of fixtures that are not part of the sequence. So it basically is kind of replacing all other active sequences with this one. Temp will do the same as I told you before. Time will reset the timing scale defined for the sequence to the normal. And toggle, we've already discussed, turns it on and off. And top returns to the first queue. That was a lot of functions to talk about. We got through all of them, and this is most of the functions, so we'll get back to these. Actually, I'll just go through these right now. So for a preset, for instance, we'll just set the lights at that value. Call recalls something. Login you can use on a user only, and login just lets you log into that user. If you go to the encoder settings over here, we have the same options for encoders and for faders. The encoders have the options of empty, master, rate, speed, temp, time, X, XA, or XB. And so empty, of course, does nothing. Master defines how bright the dimmer output is for the sequence. And there's some important sequence settings that define how this affects the sequence as well. Rate is just going to change the rate that is specific to that sequence, and that's a whole other topic. Speed affects the speed master specific to that sequence. Temp will let you turn on the sequence as much faded in as how high you have the fader or the encoder, and when you pull it back down, it will reset it to 0. Time is going to affect the timing scale of all of your fades in that sequence. X is crossfade, and this will be very similar to temp, except that you can go to the next queue as well. So when you get to the top with your fader or encoder, coming back down will go to the next queue rather than turning off. Crossfade A and crossfade B interact with each other in a different way depending on how you have the sequence settings set, but basically they either control increasing versus decreasing values or one queue versus the next queue's master levels. And again, different functions are available depending on what type of object you have assigned to the executor. Now, another important thing is exec configs, and this is how you define the default actions that will be used on an executor when you first assign something to it. So your exec configs live here. You click on this. You have default sequence. We can load this, and then that will load it. So this is the default for a sequence. Default macro, default view, default world, and so on. And these are defaults for those objects. Now you can also change these. If you want your default for a sequence to be something different, you can change it and then hit save. You can also insert a new configuration, and you can assign it to a certain type of object, like specify what type of object uses that. But these are all totally customizable, so you can set these, and what you can also do is you can set ones that you use a lot, and even if it's not the default, you can come in here and change the exec config and just set it to the new one. You can load it, and then you don't have to change all of the things over here manually for that. You also have the option to recast a config, which will make all of your object with that configuration assigned change to that. Now this is important because with any of these you can see that are cyan, that's something we've changed from the assigned exec config. So that would change back at that point. As we can see, it recasted to the sequence here when I did that. You can also delete these and all the options. You can list references. You can see everything that's currently referencing it, which is very useful. And that is about it for object actions. I know that was quite a lot to get to for relatively little, you would think, but I'm hoping that that's actually tremendously helpful, because sometimes those little things, you just need that little bit of information and it can be hard to get because everyone thinks it's too simple and nobody talks about it, but nobody wants to answer those questions either, which is really dumb, because if there's no resources, then you have to ask the question, but that's just how it is. Now, I've talked a little bit in this video about how there are different sequence settings that you can use that will affect how these different actions are really functioning. And I would also comment on how we've talked about these icons on our sequences, but there's also these icons right here. I have this one right here, and you might be wondering what those are all about. So in my next video, I plan to talk about sequence settings. So if you have any questions at all about sequence settings, I'm going to cover them all in detail. So make sure you check out that video in a couple weeks here, and I will see you then. Have a great week and happy programming.